3 minutes. That was all the time Philip allowed her to pack 10 years of marriage into a single battered suitcase. Rain hammered against the windows of the penthouse on Fifth Avenue, a rhythm matching the pounding in Penelope's chest. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply looked at the man who had sworn to love her forever, now holding the hand of a woman 10 years younger. Philip thought he was discarding a broken housewife. He didn't realize he was evicting the only person standing between his empire and total ruin. He threw her out like trash, but he forgot one thing: trash doesn't fight back. But the owner of the debt does. The envelope hit the marble floor with a sound that seemed louder than the thunder rattling the glass walls of the penthouse. It wasn't sealed. It was open, the papers inside spilling out slightly, revealing the bold, unforgiving font of legal termination. "Sign it, Penelope," Philip said. He didn't even look up from his phone. He was standing by the fireplace, the orange glow dancing off the rim of his crystal whiskey tumbler. "Don't make this messy. The security team is already in the lobby. You leave tonight." Penelope stood frozen near the grand piano she hadn't played in months. She was wearing her silk robe, the one Philip had bought her for their 5th anniversary in Paris. It felt like a costume now, a prop from a play that had been canceled without notice. "Tonight." Penelope's voice was barely a whisper. "Philip, it's 2 a.m. It's pouring outside. You can't be serious." "I'm deadly serious," Philip replied, finally turning to face her. His face, once the handsome visage of the man she adored, now looked sharp, predatory. "Chloe is moving in tomorrow morning. I want the air cleared out before she gets here. I want your scent gone." A giggle erupted from the shadows of the hallway. Penelope turned to see her Chloe. She was Philip's executive assistant, a 24-year-old with ambition that outweighed her experience. She was leaning against the doorframe, wearing one of Philip's dress shirts, nothing else. "Sorry, Viv," Chloe said, smirking. "Philip needs a partner who understands the modern business world, not someone who just hosts tea parties." Penelope felt the blood drain from her face. "I built this company with you, Philip," she said, her voice trembling but gaining strength. "When we started, we were working out of that garage in Queens. I did the books. I met with the investors when you were too scared to speak. I put my inheritance into the initial seed round." Philip laughed. It was a cold barking sound. "That paltry inheritance. That $50,000, Viv, my company is worth $3 billion today. Your contribution is a rounding error. I've already had the lawyers calculate your payout. You get the apartment in Jersey and a monthly stipend for 2 years. Take it or I drag this out in court until you can't afford a loaf of bread." He walked over, grabbed her arm, and shoved the pen into her hand. "Sign, now." Penelope looked at the pen. It was a Mont Blanc she had given him when they landed their first major contract with the Stratford Group. The irony tasted like ash in her mouth. She looked at Chloe, who was inspecting her nails with bored indifference, and then back at Philip. Something inside Penelope snapped. It wasn't a loud snap, but a quiet, internal severance. The woman who pleaded, the woman who tried to fix things, died in that moment. "I won't sign," Penelope said, dropping the pen. It clattered on the marble. Philip's eyes narrowed. "Then you leave with nothing. Get out." He grabbed her suitcase, which had been packed by the maid hours ago. He had planned this down to the minute, and threw it toward the elevator. The lock broke, and her clothes spilled out onto the floor. "You have 5 minutes to collect your rags," Philip sneered, "or I have security drag you out." Penelope didn't scramble for the clothes. She walked over to the side table, picked up her phone, and placed a single item in her purse, a small black USB drive that Philip had long forgotten about. "You're making a mistake, Philip," she said, her voice eerily calm. "The only mistake I made was marrying a woman with no ambition," he retorted, turning his back on her. "Chloe, pour me another drink. We have to celebrate the merger with Omnicorp tomorrow." Penelope walked to the elevator. She didn't look back. As the doors closed, blotting out the image of her husband toasting his mistress, she didn't cry. The elevator descended 40 floors, and with every floor the temperature of her heart dropped a degree. When she stepped out into the lobby, the night concierge, a kindly older man named Arthur, looked at her with wide eyes. "Mrs. Sterling, surely you aren't going out in this." "No car has been called." "I'm fine, Arthur," she said, though she was shivering. "Please take my umbrella," he insisted, rushing around the desk. Penelope took it. "Thank you, Arthur. You're the only gentleman left in this building." She stepped out into the deluge. The rain was freezing, soaking through her clothes instantly. She had no car, no home, and her credit cards were likely already canceled. Philip had been thorough. She walked 2 blocks to a 24-hour diner, the neon sign buzzing overhead. She sat in a booth shivering and ordered a black coffee with the last $20 bill in her pocket. She stared at the black USB drive on the table. Philip thought her $50,000 investment was a rounding error. He thought she was just a housewife who lunched. He had forgotten that before she was Penelope the housewife, she was Penelope Roth. And the Roths didn't just invest. They owned. She picked up her phone. It was 3:00 a.m. She dialed a number she hadn't called in 7 years. It rang once. "Penelope?" A deep, gravelly voice answered. It was loud background noise suggesting a private jet engine or a busy trading floor in Tokyo. "Hello, Father," Penelope said, taking a sip of the bitter coffee. "I'm done playing ordinary. I'm ready to come back." The man on the other end of the line was Maxwell Roth. To the public, he was a ghost, a titan of industry who hadn't given an interview since 1998. To the financial world, he was the godfather of equity. He owned shipping lines, pharmaceutical giants, and through a complex web of shell companies, he held the controlling debt of nearly half the Fortune 500. Penelope had walked away from that life 10 years ago. She wanted to be loved for who she was, not for her last name. She had changed her name, cut off her trust fund, and met Philip, a struggling visionary with big dreams and empty pockets. She had helped him build everything, believing they were partners. "I told you he was a shark, Vivi," Maxwell said, his voice devoid of "I told you so" smugness, but heavy with resignation. "A shark doesn't mate with a swan. It eats it." "He didn't just eat me, Dad. He chewed me up and spat me out on Fifth Avenue." Penelope said, her eyes fixed on the rain sliding down the diner window. "He's merging with Omnicorp tomorrow. He thinks he owns 51% of his company." "Does he?" Maxwell asked. "He owns 51% of the voting stock." Penelope corrected, her mind sharpening, shaking off the shock of the eviction. "But he leveraged the company assets 3 years ago to expand into Asia. He took a loan from a private equity firm called Argos Holdings." "Argos." Maxwell chuckled darkly. "That's one of yours, isn't it?" "It is," Penelope confirmed. "I set it up with the money grandmother left me, the money he didn't know about. I approved his loan when no bank would touch him. I own his debt, Dad. The contract has a change of control clause. If he attempts a merger without the debt holder's approval, the debt is called in immediately, in full. And he doesn't have the liquidity to pay it," Maxwell surmised. "He just bought a $40 million yacht and the penthouse. He's cash poor," Penelope said. "If I call the debt, he defaults. If he defaults, the collateral reverts to the debt holder." The collateral being his personal shares, all of them. There was a silence on the line, followed by the sound of ice clinking in a glass. "So you don't need a rescue," Maxwell said, sounding proud for the first time in a decade. "You need a suit. I need the best legal team in New York. I need a forensic accountant. And I need a fresh change of clothes. I'm walking into that boardroom at 9:00 a.m. "I'll have the car there in 10 minutes, Maxwell said. "Welcome back to the family, Penelope." By 8:30 a.m. the storm had passed, leaving New York City scrubbed clean and glistening under a hard gray sky. In the boardroom of Philip's company, Nexus Innovations, the mood was electric. Champagne was already on ice. Philip sat at the head of the long mahogany table, looking fresh and triumphant in a bespoke Italian suit. Chloe sat to his right, wearing a designer dress that cost more than most people's cars, playing the part of the doting VP. Around the table sat the board members, old men in gray suits who nodded at everything Philip said. Opposite them were the executives from Omnicorp looking hungry for the acquisition. "Ladies and gentlemen," Philip announced, standing up and buttoning his jacket. "Today is a historic day. With this merger, Nexus becomes the global leader in AI logistics. We are untouchable." He raised a glass. "To the future." "To the future," the room echoed. The heavy double doors of the boardroom swung open with a violence that made the crystal glasses rattle. Philip frowned, lowering his glass. "I gave strict instructions not to be disturbed." 3 men in dark suits walked in, first security but not building security. These men wore earpieces and looked like they chewed gravel for breakfast. They flanked the door. Then a lawyer walked in. It was Sebastian Vance. Note Vance's band changing name, Sebastian Cross. He was the most feared litigator in the city, a man known as the Butcher of Wall Street. Philip's face went pale. He knew who Sebastian Cross was. Everyone did. "Mr. Cross," Philip stammered, his arrogance slipping. I don't believe we have an appointment. If you're here representing my ex-wife regarding the divorce settlement, you can talk to my legal department." "I'm not here for your divorce, Philip," Sebastian said, smoothly stepping aside. "I'm here representing the majority creditor of this company." "Creditor? We're solvent," Philip scoffed. "We owe money to Argos Holdings, but that's a silent partner. They've never interfered." "They are interfering now," a female voice cut through the air. Penelope stepped into the room. The silence was absolute. She was unrecognizable from the shivering woman in the bathrobe just 6 hours prior. She wore a tailored white pantsuit that screamed power. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek, severe bun. She wore diamond studs that were small, but clearly worth a fortune. Her makeup was flawless, her expression made of steel. Philip blinked as if trying to process an hallucination. "Penelope. What the hell are you doing here? I told security to ban you." "You banned Penelope, the wife," she said, walking slowly toward the head of the table. Her heels clicked on the floorboards like the ticking of a bomb. "You didn't ban the chairman of Argos Holdings." Chloe laughed nervously. "What is she talking about, Philip? Get her out of here." "Argos Holdings." Penelope continued, ignoring the mistress entirely and locking eyes with Philip. "The firm that loaned you $200 million 3 years ago to save this company from bankruptcy. You signed the agreement, Philip. Did you read paragraph 14, section B?" Philip felt sweat prickling his forehead. That was a standard loan." "It was a secured loan with a strict covenant," Sebastian Cross interjected, placing a thick document on the table. "Specifically, it states that any merger or acquisition requires written consent from Argos. You didn't ask." "I didn't know who to ask." "It's a shell company," Philip shouted. "You could have asked me at dinner," Penelope said, stopping right next to his chair. "I was sitting right across from you when you bragged about this merger." She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried across the silent room. "You tried to throw me out on the street with nothing, Philip, but you forgot where the money came from. The loan is in default, effectively immediately." You can't do that," Philip stammered, looking at the Omnicorp executives who were now whispering furiously among themselves. "We can pay the penalties." "The penalty is immediate repayment of the full principal plus interest," Penelope said coldly. $250 million. "Do you have that in the bank, Philip? Or did you spend it on the yacht and the diamond necklace currently around your mistress's neck?" Philip looked at Chloe. Chloe covered the necklace with her hand, looking terrified. "I didn't think so," Penelope said, straightening up. She turned to the board. "Since the debtor cannot pay, Argos Holdings is exercising its right to seize the collateral. As of this moment, all shares held by Philip Sterling, 51% of the company, are the property of Argos." She looked at the Omnicorp CEO, a man named Mr. Henderson. "Mr. Henderson, I apologize for the wasted time. The merger is canceled. Nexus Innovations is under new management. This is insane, Philip screamed, slamming his fist on the table. You can't just take my company. I am the founder. I am the CEO. Penelope looked at Sebastian. Sebastian nodded and pulled a second document from his briefcase. Actually, Penelope said, a small, cold smile playing on her lips. As the majority shareholder, my first motion is a vote of no confidence in the current CEO. She looked around the table at the board members. All those in favor of removing Philip from his position effective immediately, please raise your hands. The board members looked at Philip, then at the furious, powerful woman standing over him, and finally at the terrifying lawyer beside her. One by one the hands went up. You're fired, Philip, Penelope said. Get out of my chair. Get out of my chair. Penelope repeated, her voice cutting through the tension like a diamond blade. Philip Mercer stood paralyzed. The boardroom, a place where he had once held court like a king, now felt suffocating. He looked at the faces of his board members, men he had golfed with, dined with, bought expensive scotch for. They were all looking down at their papers or staring resolutely at the wall. Loyalty, Philip realized with a sickening lurch, had a price tag, and Penelope had just outbid him. This isn't over, Philip hissed, leaning over the table, his face inches from hers. You think you can just waltz in here after 10 years of baking cookies and run a billion-dollar tech giant? You'll burn this place to the ground in a week. I ran the books while you were still figuring out how to tie your tie for investor meetings, Philip. Penelope replied, her expression unmoved. And as for burning it down, I'd rather rule over the ashes than let you steal another dime. Security. The three men in dark suits stepped forward. They didn't grab him, they didn't have to. Their presence alone was a heavy physical weight. I can walk, Philip spat, straightening his jacket. He turned to Chloe, who was still sitting pale and trembling. Come on, Chloe, we're leaving. We'll start our own firm. I have the contacts. I have the vision. Chloe didn't move. She looked from Philip, stripped of his power, to Penelope, who radiated an aura of absolute command. Chloe, Philip said, confusion creeping into his voice. I think I should stay, Chloe stammered, her eyes darting to Penelope. I'm the VP of marketing. I have a contract. Your contract? Penelope interjected smoothly, picking up a file from the table. Was contingent on your employment as Philip's executive assistant. Since Philip is no longer employed here, your position is redundant. However, Penelope paused, letting the silence stretch. I am willing to offer you a severance package, 3 months' pay, in exchange for immediate resignation and a non-disclosure agreement. Chloe stood up so fast her chair tipped over. I'll take it. Chloe! Philip gasped, the betrayal hitting him harder than the loss of the company. You said you loved me. We were going to Paris. Paris costs money, Philip, Chloe said, clutching her purse. She looked at him with a mix of pity and disgust. And you just lost the credit card. She scurried out of the room without looking back. Philip stood alone. The humiliation was total. He turned and walked toward the door, passing Sebastian Cross. The lawyer handed him a single sheet of paper. What is this? Philip asked dully. A restraining order, Sebastian said pleasantly. You are barred from coming within 500 feet of the building, Mrs. Mercer. Excuse me, Ms. Roth, or any company assets. That includes the penthouse, Philip. The lease was in the corporate name. Philip's eyes widened. My clothes? My watch collection? Will be boxed and sent to a storage facility in Queens, Sebastian finished. You can pick up the key at the front desk. Now please remove yourself from the premises. Philip walked out of the boardroom, down the long glass corridor where his portrait hung on the wall. As he passed it, he saw 2 maintenance workers already taking it down. He took the elevator to the lobby. When the doors opened, the bustling activity of the headquarters came to a halt. Everyone stared. The receptionist, the interns, the security guards, they all knew. Bad news in a corporation travels faster than light. He pushed through the revolving doors into the harsh daylight of Manhattan. He reached into his pocket for his phone to call his driver, then froze. The company car. It was gone. He tapped his rideshare app. Payment method declined. He tried his bank app. Account frozen. Suspicious activity, pending audit. Philip stood on the curb, the wind whipping his expensive suit jacket. Passers-by bumped into him, cursing him for blocking the sidewalk. He was Philip Mercer, the tech visionary, the billionaire. But on the sidewalk, without his cards, without his title, without his wife, he was just another guy in a suit looking for a ride he couldn't afford. A black town car pulled up to the curb. For a second, Philip thought it was for him. The window rolled down. It was Penelope. She sat in the back, looking cool and composed behind dark sunglasses. "I realized I forgot to tell you one thing," she said through the open window. Philip stepped forward, a flicker of hope igniting. Maybe she was bluffing. Maybe she wanted to make a deal. "Viv, look, we can talk about this. The company needs me. The algorithm. The algorithm is based on my code from grad school." Penelope cut him off. "I checked the logs last night. You haven't written a line of original code in 5 years. She signaled the driver to wait a moment longer. "The thing I forgot to tell you is this. I canceled the lease on the Hamptons house too, and I spoke to your friends at the club. Turns out when you owe membership fees and lose your status, they aren't very forgiving. You're on your own, Philip. For the first time in your life, try to build something real." The window rolled up. The car merged into traffic, leaving Philip standing in the exhaust fumes, holding nothing but a restraining order and a broken ego. The CEO's office was exactly as Philip had left it, pretentious and cold. A massive abstract painting dominated one wall, and shelves were lined with awards Philip had bought rather than earned. Penelope sat in the high-backed leather chair. It felt oversized, designed for a man who needed to feel big. She spun it around to face the window, looking out over the city. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt exhausted. Adrenaline had carried her through the boardroom coup, but now the reality of the work ahead was setting in. "Are you okay?" Penelope swiveled back. Sebastian Cross was standing by the door, holding a thick stack of files. "I'm fine, Sebastian. Just exorcising some ghosts." She gestured to the room. "Have maintenance clear all of this out. I want the old furniture back. The stuff we had in the Queen's office. It's in storage." "Done," Sebastian said, placing the files on the desk. "But we have a bigger problem than furniture. The forensic accountants have been going through the servers since you took control." Penelope picked up the first file. "How bad is it?" "Worse than we thought. Philip wasn't just spending money on yachts and mistresses. He was bleeding the company dry." Sebastian pointed to a highlighted section. "Look at these transfers. Consulting fees to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. $5 million a month for the last year. $60 million? Penelope's eyes narrowed. "Who is the recipient?" "We traced the shell company," Sebastian said grimly. "It's a subsidiary of Vinter Dynamics." Penelope went cold. Lars Vinter Philip was paying our biggest rival. Lars Vinter was a shark of a different breed. While Philip was a showman, Vinter was a predator. He ran a private military contractor disguised as a tech firm. If Philip was paying him, it wasn't for consulting. "It gets worse," Sebastian continued. "We found a hidden partition on Philip's private server. He was transferring data, not just financial data. He was sending the source code for Project Ether." Penelope slammed the file shut. "Ether. That's the prototype for the autonomous drone delivery system. It's the backbone of our future valuation. If Vinter gets that, he can weaponize it." "He might already have it," Sebastian said. "The last transfer was scheduled for last night at midnight, but what?" "The transfer failed," Sebastian said, allowing a rare smile to touch his lips. "Because someone cut the internet connection to the penthouse at 11:55 p.m. Penelope let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. The storm, she murmured. The storm knocked out the local node, or... She looked at the USB drive she had taken from the penthouse. Or he tried to do it manually. She plugged the black USB drive into her laptop. A password prompt appeared. "Do you know the code?" Sebastian asked. "Philip is a creature of habit," Penelope said. She typed in "Chloe forever." Access denied. She paused. She typed in billions. Access denied. She thought back to the man she used to know, the man before the money. The man who sat with her on a rooftop in Brooklyn eating cheap pizza and dreaming of the future. She typed in Penelope. Access Philip. The folder opened. It was full of schematics, blueprints, and a contract. A sale agreement. Philip wasn't just leaking the code. He was selling the entire patent rights to Vinter Dynamics for a personal payout of $500 million. He was going to sell the company's crown jewel bank the cash and leave the shareholders and Penelope holding the bag of a hollowed-out shell. He was going to cash out, Penelope whispered, fury replacing her exhaustion. He was going to destroy everything we built just to save his own skin. The intercom on the desk buzzed. It was the new executive assistant Penelope had hired an hour ago, a sharp older woman named Mrs. Higgins, who had been fired by Philip for being too old. "Ms. Roth," Mrs. Higgins' voice crackled. "There is a gentleman here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent regarding the ether protocols." "Who is it?" Penelope asked, though she already suspected. "He says his name is Lars Vinter." Penelope and Sebastian locked eyes. "Send him in," Penelope said, smoothing her blazer. She looked at Sebastian. "Stay here. I want a witness." The door opened and Lars Vinter walked in. He was a tall man, Scandinavian with ice blue eyes and a suit that cost more than Philip's entire wardrobe. He didn't look like a tech nerd. He looked like a Bond villain who had won. "Mrs. Mercer," Vinter said, his voice a smooth baritone. "Or is it Ms. Roth now? Hard to keep up with the tabloids." "Mr. Vinter," Penelope said, not rising from her chair. "To what do I owe the displeasure?" Vinter chuckled, pulling up a chair uninvited. "Straight to the point. I like that. Philip was always so tedious with his small talk." He placed a briefcase on the desk. "I'm here to close the deal Philip and I started. I understand there was a change in management, but business is business." "The deal is dead," Penelope said flatly. "Project Ether is not for sale, especially not to a company that puts missiles on delivery drones." Vinter's smile didn't falter, but his eyes grew colder. "You misunderstand, Ms. Roth. I'm not asking to buy it. I've already paid for it. $60 million in consulting fees, as I'm sure your lawyer has found. Consider that a down payment." "That was embezzlement by a rogue CEO," Sebastian interjected. "We will be filing suit to recover those funds." "Good luck with that. The Cayman courts are notoriously slow." Vinter dismissed him with a wave of his hand. He leaned in toward Penelope. "Here is the reality. I have copies of the preliminary code. Philip sent them months ago. If you don't sell me the final key, the encryption algorithm on that drive you're protecting, I will release a knockoff version next month. I will undercut your prices by half. I will bankrupt Nexus within a year." He opened the briefcase. Inside was a cashier's check. $100 million, Vinter said. "A kill fee for the project. You give me the drive, you take the money, and you walk away. You're a rich woman, Penelope. Why fight a war you can't win?" Penelope looked at the check. It was more money than she had ever seen in one place, even with her inheritance. It was an exit strategy, a life of ease. She looked at Vinter. "You think everyone has a price, don't you? Just like Philip." "Everyone does," Vinter said. Penelope picked up the check. She looked at it for a long moment. Then slowly, deliberately, she tore it in half. Then in quarters. She dropped the confetti onto the desk. "My price is seeing men like you lose," Penelope said. "Get out of my office." And Vinter, he paused at the door, his face a mask of fury. "If you release a knockoff," Penelope said, her voice steady, I'll sue you for patent infringement in every jurisdiction on Earth. I have the time. I have the money. And unlike Philip, I built the code. I know where the back doors are. Try to run my program and I'll crash your entire network from my phone." Vinter stared at her. For the first time, he looked unsure. "You're making a mistake." "The only mistake," Penelope replied, echoing her words to Philip, "was thinking you could buy me." Vinter stormed out. Penelope exhaled, her hands shaking slightly. She looked at Sebastian. "We need to patch those back doors. I was bluffing. I don't have a back door." Sebastian grinned. "Remind me never to play poker with you." "We have a war coming, Sebastian," Penelope said, turning back to her computer. "Vinter won't stop. And Philip is desperate. Desperate men do dangerous things." "What do we do first?" "First," Penelope said, typing furiously, "we rebrand, and then we go hunting. I want to know everything about Vinter's operation. If he wants a war, I'll give him a revolution." The alliance between a desperate man and a dangerous one is forged not in friendship, but in mutual malice. Philip Mercer sat in the back of a dimly lit private club in the meatpacking district. It was the kind of place that didn't have a sign, only a heavy steel door and a bouncer who knew exactly who belonged and who didn't. Philip didn't belong anymore. His membership had been revoked along with his credit cards, but Lars Vinter had walked him in. "She humiliated me," Philip said, his hands shaking around a glass of water. He couldn't even afford the whiskey on the menu. "She threw me out of my own building. She turned the board against me." Lars Vinter sat opposite him, looking immaculate and predatory. "She is a problem," Vinter agreed. "She refused my offer. She threatened legal action. She is inconvenient." "I can help you destroy her," Philip said, his voice low and urgent. "I know where the bodies are buried, Lars. I know the weak points in the ether code. I know which board members have skeletons in their closets. I can give you Nexus on a silver platter." "And what do you want in return?" Vinter asked, swirling his drink. "I want my life back," Philip demanded. "I want 10% of the new company, and I want to be the one who fires her." Vinter smiled, a thin, mirthless expression. "Agreed. But we don't just want to fire her, Philip. We need to discredit her. If she crashes the stock, the shareholders will beg for a savior. That's when we strike." Yao Chi. The attack began 3 days later on a Tuesday morning that had started with deceptive calm. Penelope was in the middle of a strategy meeting with Sebastian Cross and the new chief technology officer, a brilliant young woman named Sarah, whom Penelope had promoted from the basement server room. "The rebranding is going well," Sarah was saying, pointing to a holographic display. "Stock is up 4% since the announcement of your leadership. The market likes stability." Suddenly the screens in the conference room flickered. The stable blue graphs turned a violent red. "What is that?" Penelope asked, standing up. "Mass sell-off," Sarah said, her fingers flying across her keyboard. "Someone is dumping stock. Huge blocks. Millions of shares." "It's a short attack," Sebastian said grimly. "Someone is betting the company will fail." Then the news alert started pinging on every phone in the room. Penelope picked up her tablet. The headline on the Financial Times website made her blood run cold. Leaked emails, Nexus, CEO Penelope Roth cover-up, allegations of embezzlement and fraud. "This is a lie," Penelope said, reading the article. "They're claiming I authorized the payments to the Cayman Islands. They're claiming Philip was the whistleblower who was ousted for trying to stop me." "It's a deepfake campaign," Sarah shouted over the rising noise of the newsroom outside. "Look at these documents. The signatures are forged, but they look perfect. They used AI to replicate your handwriting." "Philip," Penelope whispered, "he's the only one who has enough samples of my handwriting to train an AI model." Within hours, the situation spiraled from a crisis to a catastrophe. The stock price plummeted 20%. Reporters were swarming the lobby of the Nexus building. The board members, those fickle cowards, were already calling Sebastian, demanding an emergency meeting to discuss Penelope's suspension pending investigation. Penelope stood by the window watching the chaos below. It was the glass cliff, the phenomenon where women are put in charge of failing companies during a crisis only to be blamed when things inevitably collapse. Philip had set her up. He hadn't just thrown her out. He was trying to frame her for his own crimes. "We need to issue a denial," Sebastian said, pacing the room. "A denial makes me look guilty," Penelope said, turning around. Her eyes were hard. "Philip wants me to play defense. He wants me to spend the next 6 months in court, proving I didn't steal money while Vinter swoops in and buys the company for pennies on the dollar." "So what do we do?" Sarah asked, looking terrified. Penelope walked over to the whiteboard and picked up a red marker. She wrote one word: trap. "We don't deny it," Penelope said. "We accelerate it." "Are you insane?" Sebastian asked. "If they want a scandal, I'll give them a scandal," Penelope said, her voice dropping to a dangerous register. "Philip thinks he knows this company, but he forgot that for 10 years I was the one who organized the archives. I didn't just keep the books, Sebastian. I kept the trash." She looked at Sarah. "Can you trace the IP address of the leak?" "It's routed through a dozen VPNs," Sarah said. "But the original upload signature, it has a timestamp." "Find it," Penelope ordered. "And Sebastian, call the SEC. Tell them we are inviting a full open audit. Tell them I am waiving all attorney-client privilege regarding the Cayman accounts." Sebastian's eyes widened. "Penelope, that's suicide. If there's even a single piece of paper Philip planted that we missed—" "There isn't," Penelope said with absolute conviction. "Because Philip is lazy. He never filed a single paper in his life without me doing it for him. He thinks he framed me, but he doesn't know how the filing system works." She grabbed her coat. "I'm going to the lion's den." "Where?" "To meet the source," Penelope said. "I'm going to have lunch with Lars Vinter." The restaurant was Le Bernardin, one of the most exclusive seafood restaurants in New York. Lars Vinter was sitting at a corner table looking entirely too pleased with himself. He was picking at a plate of hamachi when Penelope sat down opposite him. She didn't have a reservation, but when you own half of Manhattan's debt, you don't need one. "Penelope," Vinter said, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin, "you look stressed. Stock market treating you roughly today." "Cut the act, Lars," Penelope said, signaling the waiter to bring her a sparkling water. "I know it was you, and I know Philip is feeding you the forged documents." "Alleged forged documents," Vinter corrected smoothly. "The court of public opinion doesn't care about forensics, Penelope. They care about the narrative. And the narrative is that the scorned ex-wife took over the company and looted the treasury." "You're going to buy Nexus when the stock hits $10, Penelope stated. $5, Vinter corrected. "And I'll be doing the world a favor, cleaning up your mess." Penelope took a sip of her water. She looked calm, too calm. It unnerved Vinter slightly. "You know Lars," she began conversationally. "Philip is a terrible partner. He's greedy, he's disloyal, and he's sloppy. Did he tell you about the Argos Protocol?" Vinter frowned. "The what?" "The Argos Protocol." Penelope lied effortlessly. "It's a failsafe I installed in the Ether source code 3 years ago. If the company's shares drop below a certain threshold, say $7, the code automatically encrypts itself and deletes the decryption key. It turns the entire project into digital gibberish." Vinter stopped eating. "That's a bluff." "Is it?" Penelope leaned forward. "Philip didn't tell you because he doesn't know. He never understood the code. He just sold it. But you're a tech man, Lars. You know how paranoid I am. You saw what I did to the loan agreements." She checked her watch. "The stock is currently at $12. If you continue this short attack, it will hit 7 by tomorrow morning. And then you buy a shell. No ether, no drones. Just empty office buildings and lawsuits." Vinter stared at her. He was calculating the risk. If she was telling the truth, his plan to devalue the company would actually destroy the asset he wanted to steal. "What do you want?" Vinter asked, his voice losing its oily charm. "I want Philip," Penelope said. "Philip is my associate." "Philip is a liability," Penelope countered. "He's useful to you only as long as he can hurt me, but if he destroys the product you want, he's worthless. I'm offering you a trade. You stop the smear campaign, you publicly retract the allegations, and I will give you a seat." "A seat. A seat on the board," Penelope said. "Minority stake, non-voting, but you get access to the ether technology for your logistics fleet. Legally, above board. We make money together." Vinter looked at her with newfound respect. This wasn't the grieving housewife. This was a warlord negotiating a treaty. "And Philip?" Vinter asked. "Philip is mine," Penelope said. "I want him to confess, on camera." Vinter swirled his wine. He didn't care about Philip. Philip was a pawn, a noisy, expensive pawn. "If I deliver him, do I get the seat?" "You get the seat," Penelope promised. "And you make billions, or you can keep listening to the man who bankrupted his own company and see where that gets you." Vinter smiled. He pulled out his phone. "I believe Philip is currently at his temporary residence, a motel in New Jersey. He's waiting for his payout." "Call him," Penelope said. "Tell him the plan has changed." The trap was set for that evening. Philip was pacing around his dingy motel room in Secaucus. It was a far cry from the penthouse. The wallpaper was peeling and the smell of stale cigarettes clung to the curtains. He was waiting for Vinter's call, waiting for the news that Penelope had resigned. His phone rang. "Lars." Philip answered eagerly. "Is she out? Did she quit?" "Not yet." Vinter's voice came through sounding strained. "There's a problem. The board is backing her. They have evidence that contradicts the emails." "That's impossible," Philip shouted. "I made them perfect." "They have video, Philip," Vinter lied, following Penelope's script. "Security footage of you accessing the accounts. They're going to the police in the morning." "No. No, there's no footage." Philip panicked. "Listen to me," Vinter snapped. "You need to get out of there. I've arranged a plane. Meet me at the private hangar at Teterboro Airport in 1 hour. We're going to non-extradition territory until this blows over." Okay, I'm coming," Philip stammered. He grabbed his duffel bag and ran out to his rental car. He drove like a maniac to the airport, his heart pounding. He wasn't built for prison. He was soft. He needed to get away. He pulled up to Hangar 4 as instructed. A jet was waiting, engines idling. A figure stood by the stairs in a trench coat. "Lars!" Philip yelled, running across the tarmac, the wind whipping his hair. "Thank God, we have to go." He reached the stairs and stopped. The figure turned around. It wasn't Lars Vinter. It was Penelope. And behind her, stepping out from the shadows of the hangar, were 2 federal agents and Sebastian Cross. "Going somewhere, Philip?" Penelope asked, her voice calm over the roar of the jet engines. "You!" Philip backed away, looking around wildly. "Where is Lars?" he said. "Lars took a better deal," Penelope said, stepping down the stairs. "Business is business, right?" "You set me up," Philip screamed. "You set yourself up," Sebastian said, holding up a recording device. "We have the audio of your call with Vinter where you admitted to forging the documents. And thanks to Mr. Vinter's cooperation, we have the transfer logs from your laptop to his servers." The agents moved forward. "Philip Mercer, you are under arrest for corporate espionage, fraud, and embezzlement." As they handcuffed him, Philip looked at Penelope. He looked small, defeated. "Why?" he croaked. "Why go this far? You could have just let me go." Penelope walked up to him close enough that he could see the fire in her eyes that he had tried to extinguish for 10 years. "I did let you go, Philip. I let you go with a suitcase and your freedom," she said. "But you tried to take my name. You tried to take my reputation. and that belongs to me." She signaled the agents to take him away. As the police car drove off, flashing lights reflecting in the puddles on the tarmac, Penelope let out a long sigh. The war was over. "Did you really offer Vinter a seat on the board?" Sebastian asked as they walked back to the car. Penelope smiled, unlocking her phone. "I offered him a seat on the advisory board, non-voting, non-attending, and purely honorary. He's going to be furious when he reads the fine print." Sebastian laughed. "He can be furious," Penelope said, looking up at the night sky. "But he'll be rich, and men like Vinter will always choose gold over pride." She got into the car. "Let's go home, Sebastian. I have a company to run." 6 months later, the courtroom smelled of lemon polish and despair. Philip Mercer sat at the defendant's table wearing an orange jumpsuit that was a stark, humiliating contrast to the Italian suits he used to wear. His hair was thinning, his posture slumped. He looked 20 years older than the man who had tossed a suitcase into the hallway on a rainy night. The judge, a stern woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose, shuffled the papers. "Mr. Mercer, in light of the overwhelming evidence provided by the prosecution, including the testimony of your co-conspirator, Mr. Vinter, and the forensic data recovered from your own servers, I see no reason for leniency." Philip looked back at the gallery. It was packed. Reporters, former employees, curious onlookers. But his eyes sought only one person. Penelope sat in the front row. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't gloating. She was simply watching, her face unreadable. She wore a navy dress, simple and elegant. Next to her sat her father, Maxwell Roth. The titan of industry had finally stepped out of the shadows to support his daughter. "You betrayed your fiduciary duty," the judge continued. "You attempted to defraud your shareholders, and you attempted to frame an innocent woman for your crimes. I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of probation. Restitution of $60 million is due immediately." The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot. "Penelope," Philip shouted as the bailiffs hauled him up. "Penelope, please, one word. Just one word." Penelope stood up. She walked to the railing. The room went silent. "Goodbye, Philip," she said softly. He was dragged away, his pleas echoing until the heavy oak doors slammed shut. Penelope turned to her father. Maxwell nodded. "It's done." "Not quite," Penelope said. "I have one more stop." Joe. An hour later, Penelope stood in the center of the penthouse on 5th Avenue. It was empty now. The furniture had been sold at auction to pay off a fraction of Philip's debts. The grand piano was gone. The crystal tumblers were gone. Even the curtains had been stripped. It was just a glass box in the sky. "Ms. Roth." She turned. It was the real estate agent, a nervous young man holding a clipboard. "We have an offer from a hedge fund manager. He wants to buy it cash, above asking price." Penelope looked out at the view, the city that had once felt so cold, now glittering like a jewel she held in her hand. "No?" Penelope said. "Excuse me." "I'm not selling it to a hedge fund manager," Penelope said. "I'm taking it off the market." "But the maintenance fees." "I can afford the fees," Penelope said, pulling a card from her purse. It read, "The Roth Foundation." "I'm donating the property. I want this place gutted. Turn the bedrooms into counseling suites. Turn the living room into a communal space. This is going to be a transitional shelter for women who have been displaced by domestic financial abuse." The agent stared at her, his mouth slightly open. That will significantly lower the property value of the building. The co-op board will be furious." Penelope smiled a genuine warm smile. "I own the building's debt too. Let them be furious. It's time this address stood for something other than vanity." The final scene of the day took place in the newly renamed Roth Mercer Tech. Penelope had kept the name Mercer on the building, but only to remind everyone that she had conquered it. She walked into the boardroom. The table was full. At the far end sat Lars Vinter. He looked bored, tapping on his phone. "Meeting to order." Penelope said, taking the head of the table. About time, Venter grumbled. My shares are up 30% this quarter, Penelope. But this advisory board is a joke. I haven't been allowed to vote on a single initiative. I wanted us to expand into military contracting. And as per the bylaws of the advisory board, Penelope said, opening a folder, your opinions are noted and rejected. We are not doing military contracts. We are expanding Project Ether into medical supply delivery for rural areas. Venter scowled. There's no profit in saving lives. There is when you have the government contract I signed this morning, Penelope countered, sliding a paper down the table. $2 billion over 5 years, exclusive rights. Venter picked up the paper. His eyes scanned the figures. His scowl slowly vanished, replaced by the greedy look of a man who realized he had lost the battle but won the war of his wallet. Fine, Venter muttered. You're good. I'll give you that. I'm not good, Lars, Penelope said, standing up to look out the window at the skyline she now commanded. I'm just tired of men like you thinking you're the only ones who know how to play the game. She dismissed the meeting. As the executives filed out, Sebastian Cross remained behind. You kept the name Mercer, Sebastian noted. It's a warning, Penelope said. To whom? To the next Philip, she replied. She picked up her bag, no longer a battered suitcase, but a symbol of her station. And a reminder to myself, never make yourself small to make someone else feel big. She walked to the elevator, the doors opening smoothly. As she descended to the lobby, Arthur, the concierge, was there just as he had been on that rainy night. Good evening, Ms. Roth. Arthur beamed. Car is waiting. Thank you, Arthur, Penelope said. She stepped out into the night. It wasn't raining this time. The air was crisp and clear. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the oxygen of freedom. She had walked out of these doors, broken, discarded, and invisible. She was walking back in as a queen. Penelope got into the car, pulled out her phone, and dialed her father. Ready for dinner, Dad? Always, Vivi. Where to? The diner on 4th, she said, smiling. They make a terrible coffee, but it tastes like victory. The car pulled away, disappearing into the stream of lights, carrying the woman who had returned from the ashes to set the world on fire. That is the story of Penelope Roth, a woman who was told she was nothing only to prove she owned everything. Philip thought he could discard her like an old receipt, forgetting that she was the one who balanced the books. In the end, the best revenge wasn't just success. It was taking the very tools used to destroy her and building an empire of justice. It's a reminder that dignity is not something a man gives you. It's something you refuse to let them take. What would you have done in Penelope's shoes? Would you have forgiven Philip, or was 8 years in prison exactly what he deserved? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma and redemption, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another story of twists, betrayal, and sweet revenge. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.